As active as well as retired police officers, we all know that you can buy gear from a lot of different places, especially online. But I want to remind you of the importance of supporting companies that support law enforcement. And I don't know a company that fits the bill more than Galls. Their motto is proud to serve those who serve, which they do every single day. And they walk the talk by supporting dozens of public safety-focused organizations like Gold Shields. So when you are looking for gear, support our sponsor and go to Galls.com. And Galls has done something special for our listeners. Go to Galls.com and use the promo code GOLD15 and receive 15% off the next purchase you make. That offer is good until July 31st. Make sure you go to Galls.com. Support them any way you can. Use the promo code GOLD15 and get a special 15% off your purchase.
Welcome to Gold Shields. Join NYPD veterans Tom Smith and Dan Murphy. With over 50 years of combined experience chasing drug lords, dismantling cartels, and hunting terrorists. Now they pull back the curtain, sharing raw, unfiltered stories from the front lines and the heroes who stood beside them. No topics off limits. This is real. This is true crime. This is Gold Shields.
Hey, welcome back to another edition of Gold Shields. This is Dan Murphy, along with my partner in crime, Tom Smith. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing good, man. Like I just mentioned, this is one of our Christmas lists, guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
For sure.
very lucky to have him on. Very lucky.
Yeah, very lucky. No doubt about it. Just real quick before we get to this special guest that we have, always thanking our premier sponsor, Galls, Galls.com, tacticalgear.com, big part of our show, big part of our family, not even just what they do for Gold Shields, what they do for law enforcement around this country. I mean, you want a supporter, Galls is it. That's who you want in your corner. And Mike Fadden and his whole team are the best at not only just supplying great equipment and uniforms, but the support that they show law enforcement is next to none, man. Next to none. They're the
Top
best.
shelf people. We're very proud to be affiliated with them, aligned with them, and looking forward to more stuff in the future. Hint, hint. We'll leave it at that. But they're great, great folks.
Yep, no doubt about it.
Tom, tell us about our guest this morning. Without further ado, we have a lot of people we could thank, but let's get to this gentleman. He is one busy man.
You know what? John Kiriakou was on the Christmas list of Gold Shields. If anyone knows him, you could understand how difficult it was to get him. And honored that we have him. I could sit here and try to go through a resume or accolades or anything, and that's going to be silly to do. He's just so well known and on every show that's out there, but not only just on a show, which any of us can do and all of us have been on, but the expertise he brings to a show and his knowledge and what he's done and gone through in his career is what makes him what he is. And we're so thrilled and honored to have John on the show today. John, welcome to Gold Shields, and thank you so much.
Thank you both. And I've got to start off by saying, first of all, I did not know that Galls was a sponsor of your show. Secondly, I mention Galls all the time because on my very first day in Pakistan, the station chief told me to come up with a standard operating procedure for taking down a terrorist safe house. So I wrote this long list of things. I put O200 at the top of the paper, and I need battering rams, and I need, ammunition, and I need night vision goggles, and I need handcuffs, and this, that, the other thing. And I went back to the office, and I said, I gotta cable headquarters to tell them I need all this stuff. And one of the old timers in the office said, "Oh, headquarters doesn't keep any of that stuff, because we're not law enforcement, right?" But this immediate post 9/11 situation was unlike anything we had ever experienced before. I said, "What do I do?" The old timer said, "You go to this website, Galls.com. They have everything." So I go down into the basement of the American Embassy in Islamabad, Pakistan. I go Galls.com. I said, "Oh my God, they have everything." I ordered $50,000 worth of equipment. I put it on my CIA credit card. They sent it to the State Department, who put it in a diplomatic pouch. And I'm telling you, I had it less than a week later.
Wild.
It changed the course. I'm not overstating this. It changed the course of CIA counterterrorism operations in Pakistan after 9/11.
Unbelievable.
Thank you, Gauls.
Wow.
Yeah.
Where do I even go with that? Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a nice
Good
day.
to see you, John. Thanks so much for Mike, and we're good.
Well, that's a great ringing endorsement. But let's move on to you, John. You know, we're very thrilled to have you on the show. You are a very interesting human being who've had an incredible career. Sometimes we talk with our guests about how did you get into the CIA? Forget that stuff. Let's get to what you want to talk about your career, your experiences. And, you know, we have a lot of stuff going on right now, high-profile stuff that touched in your area, to say the least. So tell us a little bit about your time in that agency, what you can talk about.
Sure. So the first 7.5 years that I was at the agency, I was in analysis, the Directorate of Intelligence, you know, thinking the big thoughts, writing papers that probably nobody was reading. But I worked exclusively on Iraq and Kuwait. And I was in an office that no longer exists. It was called the Office of Leadership Analysis. And so I was Saddam Hussein's classified psychological profiler. And I did that for years. I took a break in the middle to go to Bahrain on rotation to the State Department, where I was the head of the economic section at the American Embassy in Manama, again doing Iraqi sanctions issues. Went back to headquarters again on Iraq, but by then as a senior analyst. And I got very bored. It was just Iraq, 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 Iraq all the time, every day, all day long. And then we do a no-fly zone, and then they violate the no-fly zone. And then we do sanctions, and then they violate the sanctions. It's like, I got to do something. There has to be more to life than this. So I made a very unusual change. And I was able to do it only because I was the only person in the entire CIA who spoke both Arabic and Greek. So I switched to Counter-Terrorism Operations in the Directorate of Operations, the DCI Counter-Terrorism Center. And I went to Greece as the Counter-Terrorism Operations officer, working primarily against two groups, Revolutionary Organization 17 November and Popular Revolutionary Struggle. But the Arab groups were all represented in Athens, everybody from Abu Nidal to PFLP, PFLP-GC, DFLP, the Libyans, the Iraqis, everybody was in Athens, everybody. Did that for a couple of years, went back to headquarters briefly, and then I transitioned into a leadership position where I was teaching Middle Eastern intelligence services how to carry out counterterrorism raids on safe houses. Then 9/11 hit. I went out to Islamabad as the chief of counterterrorism operations for the CIA. And we had a lot of high-level captures, HVTs, high-value targets, Abu Zubaydah being the highest. And then I went back to headquarters briefly as the chief of counterintelligence in Alex Station, the Osama Bin Laden group. But because the Abu Zubaydah capture was so fresh, it was such a big deal, he was the first HVT that we caught, I got promoted and became the executive assistant to the deputy director for operations. And then I finished out my career as the counterterrorism officer at the United Nations Security Council in New York, and then went into the private sector. Later on, I became the chief investigator on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. But that sounds way better than it actually was.
All right, so that was your resume. Thanks for coming, John. Appreciate your show.
Thanks for having me.
You know what? I mean, obviously, the one part that we want to touch on is, you know, pre 9/11. You know, I remember before 9/11 on one of the news shows, Nightline, whatever it was back then, you heard about this guy, Usama Bin Laden. And it was an interview, like John Miller did it, and it was like, all right, here's a guy living in a cave. Everyone's saying he's a bad guy. Okay. What was the read, if you can, to what you can talk about? What was the read of him before anyone really knew about him?
Oh, that's a great question. And you know what? That's a question that I've always wanted to talk about, and nobody has ever asked me. Okay, so it's 1990, right? 1990. I'm in the Office of Leadership Analysis. I sit next to this awesome guy, and he's the Saudi analyst. And we used to have this little in-house magazine. I don't even remember the name of it. Like for those analysts who were junior and weren't working on countries where you could get anything published. Like if you're working on, Kiribati or however you pronounce that country. Yeah, the president doesn't give a shit about Kiribati. So if you want to get promoted, you got to publish. They used to say publish or perish. So we had this in-house magazine that you could publish, and say, well, I got into it was called the Leadership Review. I got into the Leadership Review. Okay. So this guy next to me, I won't give you his name, but he's an awesome guy, great analyst. July 1990, he writes an article about Osama bin Laden. And he calls him potentially the most dangerous man in the world. And I read it. They used to send copies around all over the office. I read it and I was like, who? I mean, I knew the bin Laden family. My first tour was was in Saudi Arabia. The bin Laden family was enormous and very, very honorable, right? I mean, half of them have houses here in the States. And he said, no, dude, this guy's unhinged. He's a bad one. And I was like, okay. Fast forward then to 1997. They've done away with the Office of Leadership Analysis, and we all got merged into the Office of Near Eastern and South Asian Analysis. And the branch that I was in, that included Iraq and the Gulf states, we're asked to give a briefing to the brand new office director who didn't know anything about the Middle East. And he says, just out loud, he's not sure which analyst to address. He says, and I'll never forget the way he said it. He says, Usama Bin Laden. Why should I care about this guy? And then the analyst says, it's actually Osama Bin Laden, and I think you should care very much about this guy. And then he launched into his briefing. And I said to him, is this the same guy from 7 years ago? And he said, yeah. He said, this guy is bad with a capital B. And it's going to cost us if we don't pay attention to him. And then sure enough, the rest is history. But my friend Mike was watching UBL for 11 years before 9/11. And he was trying to warn people in writing, people in positions of great authority. And people are like, who's this poor little rich kid? Osama bin Laden. You mean the brother of the guy from Beverly Hills? Right? And then you say, well, yeah, but the old man, Abdurrahman bin Laden, he had 114 sons. And, one of them's bound to be a bad seed, right? You have 114 sons and another 100 and something daughters.
He was a busy guy. Wow.
Yeah, he was a busy guy.
Oh, to say the least.
That's why he needed those billions of dollars just to feed all those mouths he created.
So Bin Laden, he grows in stature through the years, but Lieutenant Colonel Robert Patterson wrote the book Dereliction of Duty. If you know him or are aware of the book, yeah, and he writes in it about the opportunities we had to take him out during the Clinton administration.
Yes.
When he carried the football for the president.
Yes.
And those are shocking allegations that we had the chance to stop him dead in his tracks, military intelligence.
Multiple times.
Right.
Dan,
Multiple times.
Dan, listen to how quaint that is. Right? So, of course, the CIA is tracking bin Laden everywhere. Every time he gets on a plane, every time he's in a caravan, we're tracking him. NSA, same thing. They have his phone. They're watching him. He moves 6 feet. They write a report. He moved 6 feet to the right. That kind of thing. I'm exaggerating, of course. So we go to the White House and say, we got him. We have an exact location. We need to snatch him. And here's the quaint part. President Clinton says, has he been indicted? We're like, indicted? Clear and present danger is the term. The CIA doesn't care about indictments, right? Give us permission to snatch him or kill him. Well, he hasn't been charged with violating the law. And so they let him go. Then he is expelled from Sudan. He's on his way to Afghanistan. How do you get to Afghanistan? Believe it or not, you get there like everybody else. You go to the airport, you check your luggage, you go through the security, and you get on the plane and fly to Afghanistan. So he's in the transit lounge at Doha Airport. And NSA is like, he's in the transit lounge at Doha Airport. And we run to the White House. We got to get him. So we call the Gutteries. Say, grab him for us. He's in the transit lounge. The Gutteries say, has he been indicted? And we say, no, he hasn't been indicted. Well, what the fuck is the Justice Department doing all those years of the Clinton administration? Well, I mean, we had the intelligence. You can seal the intelligence. You can seal the indictment. National security information is in sealed indictments all the time. But they just never really got around to it. And so the Gutteries were like, listen, rule of law, international treaties. If there are no criminal charges pending against this guy, we have to let him get on the plane. And so he got away again. Again.
That is shocking. That is shocking.
Sickening.
And you know what? What's saying? It's a great story. It's a great insight into what happened, and here's why. You had so many reports and so many talk shows, whatever it was, about the quote-unquote failures before 9/11 of the Bureau, the agency, and all that. But hey, everyone, failure weren't there. Failure was above them. Failure could have been avoided with one person saying, yeah, go get them.
Leadership. That's the definition of leadership. Yes, exactly right. The buck has to stop somewhere. And, like the old saying goes, the fish rots from the head down. Somebody make a call. Indict this guy. At the very least, indict him for conspiracy. Now, 9/11 wouldn't have happened.
I didn't take the 3 months it would have taken to read and really digest the 9/11 report, but I watched some of the hearings, which is to say I'm vaguely familiar with the overall stance of the commission. They seemed to beat everybody up, but they didn't beat the president up, did they? They sure didn't beat up the office of the president or anybody in his cabinet.
No, that's exactly right.
Either president.
And just to give you an indication of the abject failure of the 9/11 Commission too. These are supposed to be the best and brightest, right? Some of the greatest leaders that our country has, the deepest thinkers, the greatest analysts, the most accomplished investigators. But they were not permitted to interview anybody from the CIA, and they were not permitted to interview anybody at Guantanamo. So they never got the full story. Never. They weren't permitted to get the full story.
No, they weren't. That's for sure. And that's why, all of us who were much more than Dan and I later on, but those of us who were involved in that and the aftermath of the 9/11 Commission knew the circus and farce that it was.
Oh my God.
And we all knew it.
And you have to compare it to like the Warren Commission, where the fox was in charge of the hen house. It was the same thing with the 9/11 Commission. I remember the president making the appointments, and people were saying, "Oh my God, Lee Hamilton! Oh, he's so highly respected." And on both sides of the aisle, and he knows so much about the Middle East, and he was chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Yeah, all that's true, but if you don't permit the man to actually collect the information, then how do you expect to be able to respect the conclusion?
Yeah, they spent a lot of time beating up Giuliani and Bernie Kerik over radios. Yeah, interoperability of radios. That's the cattle's already out of the barn, guys.
Yeah,
What are we fighting for?
exactly. I live in Arlington, Virginia. Of course, the Pentagon is located in Arlington. And as soon as that came out, Dan, people were saying, oh my God, look at the criticisms of Bernie Kerik and Giuliani. We better get our radios all on the same frequency. It's like, that's what you guys are worried about right off the bat. That's the most important thing, is you need new radios. Like, that's going to prevent the next terrorist attack.
And John, let me tell you, us being involved in that was true. That was all I cared about.
Yeah.
You know, all right, we need to coordinate this and where a emergency spot's going to be and where, a command center is going to be that we can be say all that nonsense instead of what actually was the failure of this.
When I got back from the Abu Zubaydah capture, the director, George Tenet was the director at the time. He asked me to go to NSA. We were under orders not to talk to anybody about any aspect of the Abu Zubaydah capture. It was so highly classified, so compartmentalized that even inside the CIA, we weren't allowed to talk about it. So George told me to go to NSA. He said they want to do a hot wash. I said, okay. I drive all the friggin' way over to Fort Meade. It's like an hour and 15 minutes away. And
when it comes to the safety of law enforcement, first responders, and military personnel, every moment counts, especially in the dark. Streamlight provides the reliable, high-performance lighting solutions that these heroes trust in the most dangerous situations, whether it's a car stop, navigating dark alleyways, or exploring abandoned buildings. With Streamlight by their side, our heroes can tackle challenges with confidence, knowing they have the power of advanced lighting technology to guide them. From the first responders on the front lines to the law enforcement officers ensuring our safety, Streamlight is there to make every mission a little easier and much safer. Join us in supporting those who protect us. Visit Streamlight.com to discover how you can be part of the team keeping our heroes safe. Because when they shine, we all shine.
Have you ever wished you could go back in time and see the events that shape the true crime cases that fascinate you? With newspapers.com, it's like having a time machine to the past. Dive into more than 1 billion newspaper pages from 1690 to 2025 and relive the headlines that shocked entire towns. Explore newspapers from the US, UK, Canada, Australia, and beyond with a simple search. Read the breaking news as it happened, crime scene reports, witness testimonies, and courtroom drama. Explore forgotten clues and see how the media shaped the narrative of infamous cases. But it's not just the major stories. Newspapers.com lets you dig into local mysteries, missing persons reports, and the small-town scandals that history forgot. It's the closest you can get to being there when it all unfolded. So, if you're ready to dig deeper into the crimes that keep you up at night, start your journey today at newspapers.com. Use the code GOLDSHIELDS for an exclusive 20% discount on your subscription.
And it's a good-sized group. It was like 8 people, engineers mostly. And I thought they just wanted sort of the blow-by-blow of, first we did this, and then he did that, and then we did this, and we found him here, and then he wasn't there. And they were like, what was the most important thing that went wrong in the operation? We want to fix it. And I said, that's an entirely different thing. I said, my God, our radio batteries didn't last but 15 minutes. So as soon as the operation started, the radios all went kaput and we had to rely on cell phones. And you try relying on a cell phone in Faisalabad, Pakistan at 3:00 in the morning. I said, my God, you guys, we put a man on the moon and we can't make a battery that lasts for more than 15 minutes. And then that's what they did. They set out to make a decent battery.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Crazy.
So you have, we could probably talk all day about certain failures, but there's one thing that you're pretty well known for, And, Tom and I we love our country. We know you do too. But we have what we'll call a healthy skepticism about
That's
our
it, Rob.
government
Amen.
because it's run by people and politics is the name of the game in Washington. We all know that.
Yes, sir.
So you saw some things and you blew the whistle on some stuff, which I'm proud to have you on the show because
Thank you, Dan.
we need more brave patriots like that who do that.
Thank you very much.
Government needs to be kept in check. It's the whole reason why we became a country in the first place. Tell us what you can tell us about that, if it's not too premature in the discussion to get to that.
Oh, no, not at all. I had no idea when I was stationed in Pakistan that these conversations were taking place at the leadership levels at the CIA about what to do once we caught a high-value target. There was no plan. Going back a little bit in terms of operations in Pakistan, we got to the point right before the Abu Zubaydah capture where the Pakistanis came to me and said, the jail's full. We were just packing everybody into the Rawalpindi jail. Rawalpindi is an enormous city that abuts little tiny Islamabad. Islamabad's the capital. Rawalpindi is this giant, sprawling, filthy, semi-industrial city. We filled the jail. And the Pacs came to us and said, the jail's full. We can't squeeze one more person. You got to get them out. So I called headquarters. I said, the Pacs want these guys out. So what should I do? And my colleague on the other side said, put them on a C-12 and send them to Guantanamo. And I said, Guantanamo, Cuba? Why would we send them to Cuba? And they said, well, we came up with this plan. We're going to hold them in Cuba for 2 or 3 weeks until we can decide which federal district court to try them in. I said, oh, that's a great idea. So we sent them to Cuba, not realizing, not knowing, we had no way of knowing that Dick Cheney was saying, but if they're in Cuba, they have no right, so we could just hold them there forever. That was a different issue. So while we're on the ground grabbing these guys, the CIA's leaders at headquarters are coming up with a plan for what to do with them once we catch them. And they separated high-value targets from everybody else. So everybody else goes to Guantanamo. The high-value targets are going to get special treatment. Secret prisons, bizarre renditions that were untraceable, and a torture program. So I get home in May. I've told the story 1,000 times. I was asked if I wanted to be trained in the torture techniques. I sought the counsel of the senior officer. I said no. I had an ethical and moral problem with it, and I believed, and I still believe, it was illegal. In fact, I said to a colleague who was also asked if he wanted to be trained, I said, man, this is wrong, wrong, wrong. This is exactly what we accused the Japanese and the Germans of doing after the Second World War. I mean, look at the Nuremberg transcripts, right? We talk about exactly these same techniques that the Japanese used against our men. We executed those Japanese soldiers who had waterboarded American POW. I said, this is just wrong. So I declined. And there were 14 people that were approached, 13 accepted. They went through the reverse sear training, and then they went out to the secret site and began torturing. Well, started with torturing Abu Zubaydah. They tortured many, many other prisoners too. And in fact, they murdered some of these prisoners because, there are no constraints on what you do, not there in the room as it's happening. And then what happens when you kill somebody? You dig a hole outside the building, you put him in the hole and you cover it up. And then you say to headquarters, sorry, but, he appears to have had a heart attack during interrogation. I said, that's just wrong. No matter how you look at it, it's wrong. And then, and this is an important point, by then I had been promoted. So I'm the executive assistant to the deputy director, and I'm seeing cables from all over the world In that position, you see literally everything that the CIA is doing around the world. And these cables are coming in from the secret prison. And they're like, this is not what I signed up for. This is illegal. I want to curtail my position and come home. That is a career-ending decision, to curtail a position and return home. One secretary fainted while she was watching a torture session. We had doctors from the Office of Medical Services saying, I took a Hippocratic oath to do no harm, and you want me to be in there to revive him so you can torture him more? I quit. And I thought, well, clearly I'm not the only person who believes that this is illegal and immoral. So somebody's going to say something. And then nobody did. Nobody did. And so finally I did. In 2007, I had already left the CIA, and finally I said it. And then all hell broke loose.
Wow. So really quick, on top of the fact that it is illegal, immoral, and just really not what America stands for,
Exactly.
but at another level,
It
how
doesn't work.
successful is
Yeah.
right.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work. When I in 2015, I was hired by the APA, the American Psychological Association, to help them come up with a list that we ended up calling the Brookline Protocols, a list of rules that had to be followed for APA member psychologists to participate in national security interrogation, things that you can do and can't do. And the bottom line was, ethics aside, even legalities aside, these rough techniques, torture, enhanced interrogation, whatever you want to call them, they just simply don't work. Now, eventually, the guy is going to tell you the truth, eventually, but the truth is mixed in with so much nonsense that then you have to devote a team of analysts to clear through all this garbage, to pull out what might be true from what might not be true. And by then, the next attack has already taken place. The next cell has already moved. It just doesn't work. Listen, I've said this also before. It's like a kick in the gut for me to compliment the FBI. I hate the FBI. But if there's one thing they are really good at, it's interrogations. And the way they do it, the right way to do it, is to establish a rapport with your prisoner, to treat the prisoner with respect, and engage him in a conversation. And, it might take days or weeks. It might even take months. But eventually, he's going to tell you what you want to know. That's the way to do an interrogation.
Right. And you know what? We've all been in situations where information and intel is vital, and the time frame that you need it is vital. But the age-old line, there is a line that you do not cross. Being in the United States and being this country that we are, you don't cross that line. On top of the fact, like you just said, John, and Dan, you mentioned it too, it doesn't work. We've been involved in, and I always looked at it as same game, different crime. Terrorism, yes. I've broken guys for robbery patterns, same thing.
See?
Dan is broken guys for kidnapping cases, same thing. Just different level of bad guy.
Yes.
But we were all successful. We got what we wanted. And like you said, John, it may take a little while, but that's part of this. Sometimes it does take a little while, but it's the right thing to do, because everything after that gets muddied.
Yeah.
No one trusts anyone anymore. It's over.
Yeah.
The level of trust that you need is gone.
Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was now infamously waterboarded 187 times, in addition to undergoing all different other kinds of torture. And KSM was an incredibly bad guy. He was the mastermind of the 9/11 attacks, bona fide terrorist, the blood of 3,000 Americans on his hands. But at the end of his torture, he had also confessed to murdering Daniel Pearl, who was a journalist for the Wall Street Journal. Dan came to the embassy in 2002. Tommy McHale, who was a detective for the Port Authority of New York, New Jersey, and was on loan to the
We know Tommy.
one of my
We had him on the show.
in the world. Oh, no kidding.
I know him 30 years.
Oh my God. I'm proud to call him a friend.
He's
So
tremendous.
So Tommy calls me and he says, "Hey, this reporter's coming in today. Do you want to talk to him?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll come down." So Tommy and we met him downstairs. We took him out to the walk-in room, which was just outside the hard line. And Tommy said, "This is a big, big mistake," he told him. "This is a big mistake to go meet this terrorist to interview him." He said, "No, I've been working on this guy for 6 months. We've exchanged 50 emails. It took me all this time to finally get him to trust me." And I said, I wouldn't do it. There's literally nobody who can protect you. You don't know who these guys are. They're all murderers, you know? Tommy practically begged Daniel Pearl not to go to this meeting. And then he went anyway. And then later on, they found his head in one part of town, and they found his body in the other part of town. So at the end of his torture, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed confessed to murdering Daniel Pearl. And we knew that he hadn't murdered Daniel Pearl. We knew who had murdered Daniel Pearl. The Pakistanis had caught him. But KSM didn't know that the Pakistanis had caught him. And the guy confessed and, walked them through how he did it. And all KSM could say, and he kept repeating it, was in the video where they're hacking off Daniel Pearl's head, the arm holding the meat cleaver was very hairy. And KSM is like a gorilla. He's covered in hair. And he said, "You see, that's my arm. You see how hairy the arm is? That's my arm." We're like, "Dude, we know that you didn't kill Daniel Pearl." But he was so broken from the torture that he was just telling the CIA anything that he thought they might want to hear just to get them to stop torturing him. Well, that's not helpful in any way. If anything, it's unhelpful because it forces you to divert resources to run down these rabbit holes where there's nothing at the end. Right? There was no truth to the matter. Yeah.
This is the kind of stuff you haven't heard. Go ahead, Tom.
No, that's what I was going to say. That's why, when I said before about the expertise and the backstory of so much, we say it all the time that our show is like the backstage pass to certain stories. Well, this is it, everybody. There isn't a bigger behind the curtain than what we're hearing right now, but it's all necessary. It all needs to be said and out there. Why? Because down the line, it makes us better, because we'll be better for it. And we have to be, because we're the United States and we have to do things right.
Amen. I have been saying that for decades. For decades. Listen, at the 1984 Republican convention, you guys are probably a little, maybe too young, but the 1980.
Oh, no.
No, wait a minute.
Good.
There was a cop in 1984.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. I'm an old man.
Yeah, me too. I'm an old man. Look at my hair. Look, I got to start doing the comb over pretty soon.
You should do what I do. Just mow
I
it.
didn't even taking my hat off, so I could finish the conversation.
I just told my girlfriend yesterday, I think I need to start wearing hats. Yeah. 1984 Republican convention, Ronald Reagan gives this acceptance speech that has become legendary among political speeches, in which he said that the United States is a shining city on a hill, right? And that's what they called it, the shining city on a hill speech. Whether you like or dislike Ronald Reagan, we are a shining city on a hill for billions of people. We should be the leader on human rights and civil liberties. When we go around the world, in every country with which we have diplomatic relations, every year, and we tell them we're writing the annual human rights report, and I'm going to document A, B, and C. We know that they take that seriously. So we should. I say all the time, if I'm a I was the human rights officer at the American Embassy in Bahrain for 2 years, 1994 and 1995. And I would go to the Minister of Interior and I'd say, Your Highness, you cannot pick up a 15-year-old kid off the street and beat him to death because he marched in a pro-democracy demonstration. You can't do that. I have to report that to State Department, and then they're going to tell Congress, and you're going to lose your right to purchase American military hardware, right? Really? Because then what happens when the CIA guy goes in and says, don't listen to the human rights guy. We want you to open a secret prison here, and we're going to torture people, or better yet, you torture them. And then you just give us a transcript of what they say, and we'll give you $10 million in cash, totally untraceable. Who's he going to listen to? Is he going to listen to John, who's yelling at him for beating his 15-year-old to death, which actually happened? Or is he going to listen to the guy with the big suitcase full of money? So either we're going to be that shining city on a hill, or we're not. And if we're not, okay, let's have a national conversation about that. But we can't be both. Or we can't be one and pretend to be the other. It's not tenable.
So let me ask you a question, if you don't mind. To unravel this, everything has its root or its genesis or its purpose or motivation. Why was this program in place? Now, there's probably a million different ideas about it, right? People
Well,
say,
there's one overriding reason.
yeah, but a rise in patriotism, revenge, we were pissed off, political careers. I mean,
That's another one.
right? Who
Yeah.
wants to look good? Which agency wants to be the first to get the hot intel? I mean, tell us what your personal,
Yeah, all of the above, Dan. That's really quite a comprehensive list right there. So number one was revenge. 9/11 was the greatest intelligence failure in American history, right? I said at the beginning of the podcast, the buck has to stop somewhere, right? And the CIA was asleep at the switch. And because of that, 3,000 Americans, innocent Americans, lost their lives that day. So number one, revenge. But all the rest of it, careerism was another one. I mean, Cofer Black, I liked and respected Cofer Black. He was the director of the Counter-Terrorism Center. And to his credit, Cofer was screaming from the rooftops that something terrible was going to happen. And at the White House, they just didn't want to hear it. They weren't interested, especially Condoleezza Rice. Oh my God, talk about being unqualified for a position. She was in completely over her head. So she would tell Cofer and George and Dick Clark, who was the counterterrorism czar at the time, you guys are wrong. It's not this little band of Arabs that we need to be worried about. It's China. China is the enemy. And we're like, China? When was the last time China blew up a Navy vessel? You know, or attacked American embassies and blew them up until they collapsed. So Cofer, you know, by some accounts, people wanted Cofer's head because he was the head of counterterrorism and there were no penetrations of Al-Qaeda. And so, you know, the buck has to stop somewhere. Cofer got promoted and became Ambassador Cofer Black, the special envoy for counterterrorism. What about George Tenet? George wasn't fired for 9/11. George actually remained on for another 5 years and then launched the Iraq War, which was also based on false intelligence. If you look at any of these people that should have had their careers sacrificed for falling down on 9/11, every one of them was promoted, and then every last one of them went on to a multi-million-dollar book deal. Every one of them.
Wow. And you know, and we all, you know, us in that world, you know, again, you more than us, but kind of knew all that nonsense that was going on and what they got out of it and promotions, and which always seemed to be the thing. You screwed up, you got promoted, you know, because it was easier.
Yeah.
It was easier than having to answer for something or moving someone out of somewhere. You just promoted them, you moved them somewhere, no one really knew where they were anymore, and no one asked anymore.
And let me add something too. I was in the Counter-Terrorism Center on the morning that the embassy bombings, the Africa embassy bombings took place. And so I come out of my office. Yeah, there are TVs hanging down from the ceiling all over the place, right? All on different networks from around the world. So I come out of my office. There's a colleague there standing there, and she's watching the TV, and it's this smoking rubble from our two embassies in Africa. And I said, they hit embassies now? And she said, yeah, they destroyed them both. And I said, let's see who loses his head over this. And she said, let's see who gets promoted over this. And that's what happened.
That's disgusting and shameful, but that's the DC way, isn't it?
It is. You fail upward.
So let's go back really quick. I'm sorry, Tom, you were going to ask something.
No, go ahead.
I was saying, 2007, you come forward and you whistleblow. What can you tell us about that experience? And it had to be a very trying thing to do.
Yeah, I wish that I could tell you that I did it because I had such closely held feelings that I just couldn't take it anymore. And so I grabbed the bull by the horns and I went out there. And that wasn't it at all. I kept waiting for somebody to come out and say something. And then finally in December of 2007, Brian Ross called me from ABC News. And Brian said that he had a source who said that I had tortured Abu Zubaydah. I said that was absolutely untrue. I was the only person who was kind to Abu Zubaydah. And Brian said, well, you're welcome to come on the show and defend yourself. I didn't know that was an old reporter's trick because I had never met a reporter before. I had never spoken to a reporter. I said, I'll think about it. That was a Monday. On Wednesday, President Bush gives this press conference in which he looks at the camera and says, we do not torture. And I said to my wife was a senior CIA officer at the time. I said, he's a bald-faced liar. He's just looking the American people in the eye and he's lying to us. And I thought, well, that's Washington. 2 days later, it's Friday, and Bush walks out of the south portico of the White House, and he's walking toward the helicopter to go to Camp David for the weekend. And a reporter shouts a question at him. And he stops and turns, and he says, well, if there is torture, it's because of a rogue CIA officer. And I said to my wife, Brian Ross has sources at the White House, and they're going to try to pin this on me. So I called Brian Ross and I said, I'll give you your interview. The interview was the following week. I think it was a Tuesday. And I decided in the interim that whatever he asked me, I was just going to tell the truth. And so that's what ended up happening. I said that the CIA was torturing its prisoners. I said that torture was official policy. And I said that the policy had been personally approved by the president.
And tell everyone the ramifications of that.
Yeah, well, that's where it gets even more Washington-esque. The very next day, the CIA filed what's called a crimes report against me, saying that I had revealed classified information. So the FBI started investigating me from December of 2007 to December of 2008. And then in December of 2008, they sent my attorneys a declination letter declining to prosecute me. They said that torture was a crime. And this goes to the very heart of the disagreement between the CIA and the FBI. They said torture was a crime, and it is a felony in the United States to classify a criminal act. Right? Interesting. So they declined to prosecute me. 3 weeks later, Barack Obama becomes president. John Brennan becomes the Deputy National Security Advisor for Counterterrorism. Brennan asks the Justice Department to secretly reopen the case against me. I had no idea that for the next 3 years, my phones were tapped, my emails were being intercepted, and teams of FBI agents were performing surveillance on me. 3 years. And then in January of 2012, I was arrested and charged with 5 felonies, including 3 counts of espionage. And then the fight was on to save myself.
They charge you with espionage. Well, what was the substance of these charges? What did they throw up there? This I want to hear.
This was kind of a novel use of the Espionage Act. And I will say a couple of things about this. The Espionage Act was written in 1917 to combat German saboteurs during the First World War. Between 1917 and Barack Obama's inauguration in 2009, 3 Americans were charged with espionage for speaking to the media. 3. Just during Obama, 9 people were charged with espionage for speaking to the media. 3 times all previous presidents combined. That was John Brennan. John Brennan had a Nixonian obsession with national security leaks, and he convinced Obama to go after every one of the whistleblowers. Listen, nobody objects. Nobody should object to espionage charges against somebody who's working for a foreign power, working for a terrorist group, whatever. But in my case actually set a legal precedent. Our argument was telling the truth to ABC News and having lunch with the New York Times is not espionage. It's constitutionally protected free speech. My judge, and this was what the precedent was, said that she would not respect decisions made in other federal district courts, that she would not respect any precedent indicating that a person should be charged with espionage only if there was no public interest, right? So I found an illegality, torture. The American people, I decided the American people need to know that the government is committing the crime of torture. The judge says, She defined espionage in the broadest way possible, and this is the precedent. She defined espionage as providing national defense information to any person not entitled to receive it. Period. And my lawyer jumped up and said, Your Honor, are you saying that a person can accidentally commit espionage? And she said, That's exactly what I'm saying. It's crazy. So now anybody can be charged with espionage. And I'll remind you that if the feds want to make it a death penalty case, espionage can be punished by death. So we're not talking about, $50 fine here. We're talking about a death penalty charge.
That's insane. I mean, again, that's overstepping, that's overreaching, that's being power hungry, going, no, I'm going to make it this, and just completely changing it, its definition. I mean, that's a bad idea, precedent.
That's Judge Leonie Brinkema of the Eastern District of Virginia. She's a Bill Clinton appointee, and she's dangerous.
She's still there, still on the bench.
Still there. She's like 80 years old and still wrecking people's lives each and every day.
So you end up doing like 2 years in federal prison.
Right. I did 23 months.
All for telling the truth. All for telling the truth, everybody. Everyone make a note of that, all right? Telling the truth and outing bad policies, bad behavior that cost people's lives, that went against everything the United States stands for, and you got thrown to the wolves to say it took 2 years off your life.
Yeah. But you know what, though, Tom? as odd or maybe even irrational as it might sound, I would do it again.
I know. I knew you were going to say that.
I
knew
would.
you were gonna say
The only thing I would do differently is I would hire my attorneys earlier on in the process. But that's just a little detail. I would do it again. I remember saying to myself at the time, I'm right and they're wrong. And now here we are 18 years later, and I know I was right. And I know that they were wrong.
good for you. And good for you. And I'm glad you're here doing what you're doing today. And that's what I want to get to next. I saw an interview with you recently about Jeffrey Epstein and everything going on about him. I'm like, oh, we got to hit this. Especially, right. This guy, we don't write, Dan and I and everyone who knows our show knows it's unscripted. This is just, talk that we do and questions that we come up with during the show. This I actually wrote down. I actually wrote down Epstein with a bunch of stars around it. So, John, professionally, historic, what's your take on this circus going on?
Well, where do you even begin? First of all, I was engaged in the equivalent of a WWE SmackDown with Alan Dershowitz a couple of weeks ago on Pierce Morgan's show. I was with Scott Horton. I don't know if you guys know Scott Horton or have had him on your show, but this guy is absolutely brilliant. I wish my brain could work in such a linear fashion as his does. I could sit and just listen to him talk all day. So it was Scott and me versus Alan Dershowitz and the former head of Mossad. And I said that I was 100% confident that Jeffrey Epstein had been a Mossad access agent, right? An access agent is somebody who gives a foreign intelligence service access to important people who have important information. And I said this on the show. If you're a foreign intelligence agency, you're not going to recruit Bill Gates. You're not going to recruit Bill Clinton or Peter Thiel or Prince Andrew. They don't have vulnerabilities that would allow you to make that recruitment. So you do the next best thing. You recruit the guy next to them, right? And then maybe you provide a honeypot so you can hold something over their heads if you have to. You probably won't have to. But you wire the bedrooms for audio and video. You wire the bathrooms for audio and video. You collect all this information. You send it back to the Israelis. I think that it's clear that that's what we're looking at here. This was an Israeli access operation. Now, the current scandal, and this is a bona fide scandal for Donald Trump. And some of it's of his own making because he ran on this in the 2024 election. He ran on transparency and just opening the books. And now they come and tell us that there are no books. So I said just recently in the podcast, Tom, that you're referring to, that I said that, oh, how should I say? I want it to sound new and fresh rather than just repeating myself. But we're not talking about a file folder that says, sex crimes against children committed by people at Jeffrey Epstein's house, right? Yeah, okay. So if that's the file we're looking for, that file doesn't exist. But what we're not talking about is Pam Bondi said 2 weeks ago, indignantly, those videos have nothing but child pornography on them, and they will never be released. They will never see the light of day. Good. We don't want to see the child sex videos. What we want is to know who the men were in the child sex video. And then we want the head of the FBI to explain to us why those men aren't under arrest and facing trial right now. Who's being protected and why? And it's just a mystery to me why that isn't happening. You look at Kash Patel and Dan Bongino. I have to say, I approached life from the left. I was thrilled when Donald Trump appointed Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, because I really, really believe, I continue to believe, that the FBI needs to be torn down to its studs and then rebuilt, right? And I think those are the two guys to do it. But when Kash Patel and Dan Bongino are sitting in the room like this and looking at you from above their glasses because they hate what you're saying, that there is no more information and no more information will be released, you know something's up. And then Dan Bongino, God bless him, he didn't even go to work the next day. He was so mad. There were reports in the media that he got into a shouting match with Pam Bondi at the White House, not even in Bondi's office, but at the White House. Got into a shouting match with her. So angry, he walked out and didn't go to work the next day. So that tells me, not because I'm such a great analyst, because it's totally clear that there is other information that has not been released.
Looking for powerful defense without the mess? Meet Impact, a revolutionary line of chemical irritants designed for law enforcement, military, and personal protection. With no blowback, no cross-contamination, and easy cleanup, Carry Impact delivers unmatched stopping power without the hassle. Whether you're in the field or on the street, safety should never be compromised. Protect yourself with the next generation of defense. Carry Impact, stopping power redefined.
Patriot is a premium whiskey hard seltzer. We've carefully crafted 4 flavors that not only taste exceptional, but can be enjoyed on any occasion, anytime. We're committed to giving back 5% of all profits to the core groups we call the backbone of America. We are proud to help those who serve our great country. This is America's Seltzer, the brand that stands for quality, community, and the American spirit.
So why? Who's being protected and why are they being protected?
I don't think anybody in America thinks that there is no more information on the Epstein case. We had a guest on a show a while ago, wonderful young woman who was actually on that island.
Oh my God.
She tells her story. He was of age, but nonetheless creepy, icky, gross, and to our recollection from the conversation, she said there were cameras everywhere.
Everywhere, even in the bathrooms.
If you think about a guy like
Everywhere.
Jeffrey Epstein, he was looking to protect himself by he was the J. Edgar Hoover, massive evidence of everything to hold over people's heads so he can keep doing what he wants to do.
Right.
I think we just want to know the truth, and we voted for this guy and his team for the truth, and we want it to come out. I don't care who goes down, what side of the aisle. I don't care.
I don't care. This is not a partisan issue. Although the Democrats sure want it to be a partisan issue. I want to take a swipe at them too. You know, it's the Democrats that sponsored this bill in the House a couple of days ago that caused Mike Johnson to shut down business and send everybody home for the summer vacation, right? So no business is going to be conducted on Capitol Hill until September. He shut it down because the Democrats were going to vote unanimously to force the release of the information, and they're being joined by Thomas Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene and maybe a half a dozen members of the House Freedom Caucus. It's great to have the information released. We all want the information released. But the Democrats had 4 years to release it. And what the hell were they doing for 4 years? Other than perpetuating the cover-up. So I don't want to hear Democratic protestations now about how the information absolutely positively has to get out. They had 4 years to put it out. I'm not going to take any lectures from the Democratic Party.
No, that's exactly right. And I think when it comes to Kash Patel and Pam and Dan was, a podcast host.
Yes.
So he had a different view of what he would talk about and his view of this before he got appointed. I think the other two got way over their skis with promising stuff before they had the access of what this actually was.
Yes. I couldn't agree more. I think that's exactly what we're seeing here.
Yep.
On the one hand, that's gonna get you wrapped around the axle every once in a while. On the other hand, That's very refreshing transparency, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, hey, I have an idea. Let's tell the truth. Oh, how come nobody else ever thought of that?
It's an idea that dies of loneliness in Washington, D.C., doesn't it?
That's right.
We've had Cash on the show, and I've met him. We have enormous respect for him. I have nothing but respect for these people.
I do.
And I want to see them come through like they said they would. That's all we want.
That's it.
That's all we want.
Just do what you said you're going to do. That's it.
Right.
It's as easy as that.
And it's simple. It is, but I think what happened, just reiterating again, they sat down when they had the access to everything, went, oh, damn. Uh-oh. And by that time, it's over. By that time, you're done. You already opened the bag. But they have to do a better job explaining it and articulating it. And, like you just said, just do it. You said you can do it. Just do it.
Just do it. It's as simple as that.
Agreed. Totally
So
agree.
really quick observation, and this is, the three of us here have probably done countless hours, I can't even begin to count, of interview and interrogation in our careers. We know how to detect deception. We understand many things about interviews, the subtleties of human behavior when under pressure. We get it. I'm watching the news the other day, and Alan Dershowitz comes out, and I'm not trying to slam him, and don't sue me, Alan. This is just an observation. You came out and said, my hand to God, I know what's going on. It's in the courts. My hand. Whenever somebody says that, what does that mean?
They're
They're
lying.
trying so hard to convince you that they're calling God into the picture, to the discussion. And it's usually a sign of deception.
In that Piers Morgan episode, he said something that was so funny. I think I rattled him just a little bit. I know Dershowitz, not very well, but we've conversed a few times. So when I said that I believed Epstein was an Israeli access agent, the head of Mossad he chuckled. And then later on, Piers said, was he an access agent? Oh, well, we haven't spied on the Americans since 1985. I said, that's not true, because there were Israeli spies that were exposed in Washington in 1991. And he just goes, oh. Like, okay, I busted him. He doesn't care. It's all a big joke. Dershowitz, though, kept interrupting and just coming in and hitting me over and over. And he said, I was Epstein's attorney. He was a friend of mine. If anybody would have known, if he had been an Israeli spy, he would have told me. I would have known. And if he had been an Israeli spy, I could have gotten a shorter sentence for him because it would have been mitigating. And I said, mitigating? How in the world could it have been mitigating for you to go on TV and say, my client should have a shorter sentence because he's committing espionage for a foreign government? I said, I would have wanted to hang him from a tree. That's not mitigating to spy for a foreign power. Are you nuts? I would have given him life without parole.
There's a lot of people shaking in their boots right now.
I'll say.
A lot. And maybe they deserve to shake. Anybody who did anything disgusting with a child, with Jeffrey Epstein, get exposed. Let's clean this country out, right? Let's do. We're on a bit of a roll. A bit of a roll. Keep it going. We need it. If we're going to survive and the world goes as America goes, we need to clean this stuff up.
That's it.
And you know what, Dan and John, we've done so many shows on child trafficking, human trafficking, all that. We've done quite a few with investigators, with victims who've gone through it. If the United States is not going to defend kids, what the hell are we all doing?
Oh my God. When I give speeches at colleges and universities, this always comes up. And I use a hypothetical situation when I talk to college kids. I say, let's say you're a CIA operations officer. You're working against a terrorist group, any terrorist group. It doesn't matter which. And you have a guy, an agent, the source, who's a direct penetration of Al-Qaeda or ISIS or whatever. You meet with him once a month in a hotel in the Middle East. And this guy has given you actionable intelligence that you have used to disrupt attacks. You have saved American lives because of this man's information. So you fly out to, let's say, Amman or Cairo to meet with him. And he says to you when you arrive, you know what? I've given you everything you've wanted. I've been truthful with you since the beginning. But now you're going to do something for me. I'm not going to give you any more information until you go out and you get me a prostitute. So I say, show of hands, who would give him a prostitute? You go out there and get him a prostitute. And usually about 75% put their hands up. And I say, yeah, you would. It's not nice. It's kind of gross. But this is the job that we've chosen. So yeah, you would get him the prostitute, make him happy. What if he asks for a child prostitute? And usually people kind of look around, and then about 10% will very gingerly put their hand up. And I say, absolutely not. Not under any circumstances. It's a child, for God's sake. But here's the issue. The issue is there are no rules at the CIA. The CIA is not going to send you to an ethics class, right, that you can use to guide your career. Nobody at headquarters is going to say, no, don't do that. So you've got to go into these situations with your own personal set of ethics. Listen, in our guts, we all know right from wrong. All of us. It's a question of implementing the right. And that's what separates people in these positions.
Very well said. So well said. So, John, we could do a 5-part series with you on
Easy. Easy. My God.
And Daniel talked about this. We're like, how the F are we putting John on for, how are we going to do it? But we think we did all right. But what I want, John, please tell everyone where they can see you, where they can contact you, all that, because you're a special one. And I'm not just saying it. You're so authentic and so upfront, and we need that shit. It's refreshing.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you.
To Trump's ears. I really need that pardon. I really, really need that pardon. Well, thank you. I'm on YouTube at 2 places. One is called Deep Focus with John Kiriakou. That one's actually, I've only been doing it for about 2 months. It's actually turning into something. Deep Focus with John Kiriakou. The other one is Deprogram with John and Ted. So those are on YouTube. The other one is my Substack, John Kiriakou. Everything I do, I put on Substack. And I'm on a platform called Unified TV, UNIFYD. The show is called CIA Declassified. And what we do is we take documents, original CIA documents that the CIA declassifies, and we tell the background story to these historic events now that the classified docs are out there. It's kind of fun.
That sounds fascinating. We're going to love. We'll make sure we blast that out for our audience on our social media, and I want to look into it myself a little more. I see a stack of books behind you too. Is it something you wrote?
I've written 7. My 8th book is supposed to come out next week, but I don't know what the heck's going on there. My first 7 books were about the CIA. I did a couple of memoirs. I did my first book was called The Reluctant Spy, My Secret Life in the CIA's War on Terror. Then the second one was Doing Time Like a Spy, How the CIA Taught Me to Survive and Thrive in Prison. This one is the third one, The Convenient Terrorist, 2 Whistleblower Stories of Torture, Terror, Secret Wars, and CIA Lies. And then I was commissioned to do a 4-part series, The CIA Insider's Guide to the Iran Crisis, The CIA Insider's Guide to Surveillance and Surveillance Detection, The CIA Insider's Guide to Lying and Lie Detection, and The CIA Insider's Guide to Disappearing and Living Off the Grid. And then my 8th book is supposed to come out next week. There's been an inexplicable delay, but it's completely different than anything I've done before. It's called Remains of the Day. The Remains of the Day, The Ultimate Guide to Washington, D.C.'s Historic Cemeteries. And I'm 50% done with Whispers in the Dirt, The Ultimate Guide to New York City's Mafia Graves. And I've got a couple more in that series. once I get started, the publishers commission, they give us more. So I'm going to do Chicago cemeteries, the country western graves of Nashville, and America's most notorious serial killers. So I have lots of books coming up.
You need a resume, John. I mean, it's a life. Probably. I mean, not there or do something for yourself, for Christ's sake.
If it wasn't for my daily triple shot, I don't know what I would do.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait to start reading. I will admit I haven't read any of your books, but I'm a voracious reader, and I will read anything and everything I can get my hands on. But I can't wait for your children's book. Osama, Here's a Knock, it's going to be. What is that? Osama said, someone's at the door. I wonder who it could be.
That would be awesome.
Wouldn't it be funny? It would be funny. Oh, man, we can't thank you enough, me. And you know what? You're a courageous guy, and you're a patriot. You love your country enough to put yourself on the line, to straighten it out, to clean it up when you see it doing things it shouldn't. And thank you for being that brave guy.
Thank you.
And for sharing your story with us today. We appreciate you. And
such a pleasure to see both of you again. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the invitation.
It was a pleasure. I mean, we started this podcast, praying we would have the, able to interview people like you. And thankfully we do, because it's so fascinating to get other stories of events that you knew, but had no idea about, and I think that's what we try to bring to our audience. And that's what they appreciate, that, oh yeah, I heard about that, but holy crap, kind of thing. And John, it was an absolute pleasure and literal honor to have you on here today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And everyone out there, this time of the show, pray for all our law enforcement officers out there, federal, state, local, the military, our operatives, everyone around the world doing a unthinkable job just to keep us all safe. Pray for them, their families, and everyone involved in the mission of keeping us safe. Please don't forget them. Again, galls.com I'm getting ahead of myself. Galls.com, tacticalgear.com, our promo code GOLD15. Make sure you use it for 15% off every item on Galls, and tacticalgear.com. Our website, thegoldshieldshow.com, and every audio channel you can think of, and our YouTube channel. Please hit the bell, subscribe, follow, keep our numbers going in the direction they're going in, and we have no one to thank but our audience. Thank you so much for having our back and having guests like John make it all better. For my partner, Dan Murphy, and John, everyone out there, stay safe. Don't go anywhere. We got overtime coming.
Hey, we're back. Overtime. Cops love overtime. We love overtime. Right, Tom?
Oh. And this is overtime with John. You know what? We knew this was going to be a packed show, and we hit everyone out there like 5%, I think, of what we could have hit with him.
Oh, maybe even less. Yeah.
What an amazing guy.
Incredible career around the world, deep personal experience with the CIA and other agencies protecting America. He knows what he's talking about, and he's a man of great conviction and courage. I appreciate that in him.
Oh, yeah. I mean, how many people do we know, even more now that we're in this little world, that just BS their way through stuff, and act like they know, and, oh, I was there. No, you were sitting outside having coffee and, all that. But he is neck deep in all these big things that went on historically in this country. And just is so intelligent about how he approaches them and what he knows. What a absolute pleasure that was. I mean, literally, bro, we could have been on for 6 hours with him.
Easy, no problem. Bring me lunch later. He's that rare person who took a look at something and relied on his morals, his own personal moral compass and his ethics, and he said, I'm not going to be involved in something like that because the United States shouldn't be involved. And he blew the whistle to the media. Now, some might say, oh, he should have went to the Senate. Well, he chose to do it the way he chose to do it, and it got out direct from him, which what was his goal. And America should be the better off for people who come forward and blow the whistle legitimately on things that are being done that are criminal and just plain not what America is, right?
Right. I mean, and again, it was proven that it didn't work. You couldn't believe anything they were saying because, I mean, put any of us there, I'm going to say what I want to stop whatever's going on, and then you can expand on it later on. But, it was just something. I have so much respect for him because, listen, just going against, and we've both done it, Dan, just going against a supervisor is hard enough. To go head to head with a supervisor in a normal conversation in an office is hard to do.
Hey, you never had any problem doing that with me.
No, because you agreed with some of the crazy shit I was doing. That's why it was easy.
We're more in the same.
Yeah, Dan, we need to do this. It was, hey, Tom, we need to do this.
Oh, yeah. No, you're right. You were on the same page. Yeah.
But, think about the level he had to go through. And like you just said, Dan, like some people say, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? Who are you going to trust at that point to go and talk about this to, with what he had to tell?
Let me go bring this into the machine, the same machine that wants this to happen. Right. So, I also found it fascinating when he talked about the attempts that were made to get bin Laden, whether it be renditioned or killed, prior to 9/11, when they knew he was a rising threat, one of the most dangerous people in the world. I remember when Congress laughed at Oliver North when they asked him about his home security system. Is it true that you spent $50,000 on a home security system? Why would you do that? Protect against a man named Osama Bin Laden. He's the most dangerous man in the world, and they all laughed at him. Well, it turns out Oliver North was right. He was the most dangerous man in the world.
I mean, and John said 1990.
1990, one of his fellow analysts had him in his sights and recognized how dangerous he was.
I mean, what a different world if someone just listened. What a world we all live in now and lived in X amount of years ago would have been different.
Our lives would have been different. So many lives would have been different had they listened. And, you can Monday morning quarterback all day long. It is what it is. But at the end of the day, let's learn from it, right? Let's learn as a country from it.
Right. And that's the important thing. Listen, failures happen. People fail. Governments, entities, agencies, they fail. What do you do after the failure is the important part. What comes next? If you just keep doing the same crap, then you didn't learn a damn thing.
He's a fascinating guy. We're honored to have him on, John Kiriakou. We wish him all the best in everything he's doing. He's out there sharing what he learned, sharing his insights, and hopefully recharging America's moral compass in certain ways and expectations of government. We talked about Epstein. We all want it to come out. We voted for Donald Trump for president because we want him to expose the corruption, the swamp, the filth, bring it out. Let us decide whether or not we like it or we can take it. Don't act as though you're the guardian or gatekeeper for us. Just throw it out, right?
Right. No doubt. That's right. And you're right. They made, words matter. When you come out there for a year telling everyone what you're going to do, when and if we get in, when and if we're elected, we're going to do this, this, and this. No one's forgetting that. No one's going to forget what you put out there, and you have to come through because that was part of this vote of getting certain things out there. And, you put it out there. Now you own it. You have to own this. You have to. And they have to take it and do what they, need to do with it.
I was hoping in some way, shape, or form, this might have been a bit of a head fake from Trump. It might have been his way of stalling until indictments come out. And maybe he didn't want to release anything prior to the indictments because it's all evidentiary. I don't know. But we want to hear the truth. And that's what we voted for. Let's expose it, bring it out. We'll deal with it. Great conversation.
His reach is so wild. I mean, we have to, we'll keep up to date what we're doing, what's going on in the world, because he's going to have his hand in everything going on, and we'll have him again on, in a couple months or whatever, and just update it, because he's fascinating to just listen to.
Oh yeah. Listen to him all day. Well, another one, Tom, another one that we didn't think we would ever get lucky enough to get on. But, we talk about what's the motivation for this show, right? We want great stories, inside story, but we want truth. We're very, very big believers in putting truth out there. We won't let people come on this show and BS and stall, and we're not doing that. We're bringing people on who are going to tell you the truth about what they know and what they have seen. This guy got put into federal prison for telling the truth about criminal activity.
Yep.
That's disgusting that
It
happened.
is.
Disgusting.
Yep. 2 years of his life in a federal prison. And, we have to, here's the other thing, and he didn't get into it, which is fine, but I watched an interview with him, how he ended up in that prison because he wasn't supposed to be there. It's a wild story. It was not, the prison he ended up in was not the prison he was supposed to be in, which is a whole nother story that just took a little time to tell, and that's probably why he didn't do it. But that's another reason to have him on, because that is just a mind-numbing story of that whole event that happened. Crazy. But, we keep doing it, buddy. Keep getting them and keep getting them and keep putting them out there.
We're lucky. We're very lucky. And we love our audience. We thank you. We get great feedback all the time. We get the occasional, hey, why'd you do this? But we're happy with that. We want the dialogue with our audience. Our audience is everything. We wouldn't be doing this if not for you. And we love our sponsors. We believe in them and they believe in us. We're just lucky, Tom. We're two lucky guys.
Very much. Very much. And we just keep going for our audience. And, I got a great message the other day on Instagram. Funny, facetious, obviously. Liz, who is always talking about it, always watching the show, always listen. And she's like, would you stop having so many great guests on? Because I tell people, listen to this show, and each one's better. I can't keep up.
Yeah. That's a great problem to have if you're in our business here.
Yes.
A great problem to have.
All right, my man.
We'll wrap it up, brother. So we'll say goodbye to everybody for now, and stay tuned. We got more stuff lined up for you coming up that's gonna knock your socks off. We just keep getting lucky. So stick around and listen to our old shows too. See how we've come a long way from two stammering idiots with microphones to two stammering idiots with sponsors and microphones.
The show's a little different than it was 3 years ago. You got to say that, but
little better.
Thanks for everyone. Thanks for tuning in. One more time, thegoldshieldsshow.com, YouTube at Gold Shields, and all the audio platforms you can think of.
And fairlineservices.com for the best security services anywhere, anything you need. Fairlineservices.com, another sponsor who we love and believe in.
Love them all. Everyone stay safe. Be good. We'll see everybody soon.